Blackstone Audio presents The Politically Incorrect Guide to Capitalism by Robert P. Murphy, Ph.D. This book is dedicated to my father, whose subscription to the Conservative Chronicle and daily listening to Rush Limbaugh got me interested in free market capitalism. Are you a capitalist pig? Take the quiz and find out. 1. How much should a worker be paid? A. On a sliding scale, depending on how important his work is to society. B. Enough to support his family. C. Just enough to keep him from quitting. 2. How much should a business charge for its products? A. Just enough to cover expenses. B. Enough to keep employment high in the industry. C. The highest price it can. 3. If you are a car producer, how many deaths should your product cause per year? A. 0, of course. B. Obviously, as few as possible. The goal should be to make the cars the safest form of transportation. C. Whatever number of deaths makes your firm the most money. 4. You're hiring a receptionist. One applicant is efficient and the other is gorgeous. Which should you choose? A. The efficient one. B. The gorgeous one. C. Hire the gorgeous one if she attracts enough extra business to compensate for her inefficiency. Otherwise, hire the efficient one. 5. What's your opinion of commercials? A. They are an insidious form of corporate brainwashing that cater to our baser instincts and prejudices. B. They're occasionally clever, especially during the Super Bowl, but in general commercials are banal and tiresome. C. They can be a great way to boost sales, so long as you've correctly identified your target audience. If you answered C to 3 of the questions above, you might be a capitalist pig. If you are, oink away, because as we'll see, it's better for everybody if we have more capitalist pigs and fewer bureaucratic swine. Chapter 1. Capitalism, Profits, and Entrepreneurs. Guess what? The word capitalism was originally a Marxist smear. No economic system has ever been more successful at continuously raising standards of living than capitalism. Profits are proof that resources are used effectively. These days, everyone has an agenda. Feminists demand equal pay for equal work. Environmentalists want to save the earth from the ravages of industry. Social scientists want to reconstruct society on rational grounds. Natural scientists want to promote biodiversity and develop alternative energy sources. Consumer advocacy groups want to improve product safety. Moralists decry commercialization. Luddites yearn for the simple agrarian society of the past. Beneath their differences, all these groups share one passion. They despise capitalism. So, what is capitalism anyway? Capitalism is the system in which people are free to use their private property without outside interference. That's why it's also known as the free enterprise or free market system, because it allows people freedom to choose their own jobs, freedom to sell their products at whatever prices they like, and freedom to choose among products for the best value. In the United States, many of us take capitalism for granted. But under a socialist government or in a tribal system, jobs are assigned by the authorities. In managed economies, prices might be set and import and export quotas might be enforced. In many socialist countries, there is no right to private property at all. Everything is owned or could be confiscated by the state for the benefit of the people. Laissez-faire versus regulation. Of course, the capitalist system of the United States is different from the capitalist system in, say, Norway. And for that matter, America's capitalist system today is far different from what it was in 1900. A country can have private property and allow certain economic freedom, but also fence it in with heavy government regulation. Most modern critics of capitalism fear freedom. They fear the results of allowing people to decide their own economic affairs and letting the unregulated market run its course. They think regulators and bureaucrats know better than private citizens making their own voluntary arrangements. To show how baseless these fears are, in this book we will examine pure capitalism, even though it doesn't exist in this form today. A book you're not supposed to read. Planned Chaos by Ludwig von Mises. Irvington-on-Hudson, New York, Foundation for Economic Education, 1947. Free to starve? Critics of capitalism will concede, yes, in a market economy the workers are free to choose their jobs, but, they'll add, so what? Workers are at the mercy of employers. But better to be at the mercy of an employer in a free market, where you have a choice, the employer has competitors, and the worst he can do is cease giving you his money, than to be at the mercy of a state bureaucrat who makes choices for you with the force of government behind him. The political implications, not just the economic ones, of a free market versus a socialist economy are obvious, so much so these days that they are an embarrassment to enemies of the free market. Yes, a single mother with no savings may have to put up with quite a lot from a lecherous boss for her children's sake. But if it ever gets to be too much, she can always quit. In contrast, under a socialist system, the dissatisfied citizens' only recourses are to leave the country, if that's even allowed, or to start a revolution. So, which person will likely suffer more abuse, the worker under capitalism or the comrade under socialism? Are we simply to assume that powerful people in a capitalist system are evil, while powerful people in other systems are benevolent? Mass production for the masses. A common objection to capitalism is that it exploits the poor to serve the interests of the rich. Historically, this is precisely backward. In the alleged good old days of medieval Europe, idealized by thinkers such as John Ruskin and Hilaire Belloc, the vast majority of people either toiled in the fields to which they were bound or worked at a craft heavily regulated by a guild. Meanwhile, the elite aristocracy had a virtual monopoly on luxury goods. This all changed after the rise of modern capitalism. Rather than trying to entice a few rich clients, the emerging big businessmen now catered to the newly empowered working class. After all, it's silly to build a factory unless you plan on having hundreds or thousands of customers. The vast expansion in production allowed more and more families the luxury of keeping their children out of the labor force. During this horrible transition into the capitalist era, infant mortality dropped and life expectancy rose. The average blue-collar worker under capitalism was, and is, fantastically wealthy compared to the kings of the feudal period, except perhaps in terms of per capita castles. What a capitalist said. If capitalism had never existed, any honest humanitarian should have been struggling to invent it. But when you see men struggling to evade its existence, to misrepresent its nature, and to destroy its last remnants, you may be sure that, whatever their motives, love for man is not one of them. Ayn Rand, Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal. Central planning versus the anarchy of production. Aside from the fact that it hurts the poor, the other major objection to capitalism is that it is, allegedly, chaotic. After all, in a market economy, no one is in charge of car production, and it's nobody's job to make sure that enough newborn-sized diapers get made. The apparent chaos or unreliability of laissez-faire capitalism seems most evident during recessions, when unemployed workers are eager for jobs and consumers are hungry for their products, but the capitalist system seems to fail everyone. Wouldn't it be much more sensible to have a group of experts draw up plans, in 5-year increments perhaps, to rationally determine how resources and workers should best be deployed? This view is flawed in 2 major respects.